What are the internet rules about free speech? Hi, everyone. Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. Here's an honest question I got the other day. Can you advise me on the rules of the internet regarding free speech? I've had my comments on some sites and posts deleted by the owner. Doesn't that violate my right to free speech? No, it does not. Free speech is an interesting concept in general, especially today. Taking it to the internet, and things get even more interesting, or an interesting definition of interesting. Yeah, there are rules and even laws, but it is incredibly complex. Now, I have to start out by saying I am not a lawyer. This is not a substitute for legal advice from an attorney or some other source better versed in all the nuances of free speech. If you need real legal advice, then get a real attorney. My discussion here represents only my understanding of and my opinions on the assortment of issues that we tend to bundle up into this concept of free speech. I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be. And of course, that statement right there is something you can apply to everything I've ever said or published anywhere. Let's start by acknowledging that there is no such entity as the internet. Internet is just a term that describes a vast global network of interconnected computers. It has no laws or rules. Even the protocols, the formats, the various ways that devices interconnect aren't governed by enforceable laws. A more appropriate, if somewhat sexist term would be a gentleman's agreement. Adhere to this specific protocol, and you'll be able to do Z on the internet. Change that protocol, which of course can be done, and then all of a sudden Z won't work. Just look at the cross-browser compatibility standards used to display a web page, and you'll get an idea of all those agreements at work or not. But there are laws. There are laws that govern aspects of how we communicate with each other, including how we do so on the internet. One problem is that those laws are not global. They are different for each of the hundreds of countries in which users live. As you might imagine, countries rarely agree on everything, including what you're allowed to say and where you can say it. In some countries, it's illegal to speak ill of the ruling monarch. In others, it's only illegal if you threaten them. In still others, you can say whatever the heck you want. The issues, concepts, and legalities surrounding the internet and what can be done on it are no different. Some countries try to strictly regulate the internet used within their borders. Others, not so much. Many try to apply laws that were written before the internet's existence to current internet-related issues, and they experience varying degrees of consistency and success. In short, there's a bucket load of laws that apply to what happens on the internet. Unfortunately, it's a bucket load of inconsistent, incomplete, and contradictory laws that may or may not apply to any situation you encounter. And even then, only if it rises to the level of some government agency's attention. Not all countries have free speech provisions. Just because you live in a country that affords free speech as a right doesn't mean the service you're using in that country has the same guarantees. Depending on the location of the company, the individuals who own the site, or the hosting company that provides the server space and network connections, there may be no free speech guarantee at all, period. Now, free speech is probably not what you think it is. Let's say I run a website, because I do. To keep things simple, we'll say that you and I and the website are all within the United States. You take issue with something that I post on my website, and you say so using the comment function on that website. I am not required to publish your comment. If I do publish it, I am not required to keep it published. I can even choose to edit your comment. In the worst case, I could make it say something other than what you intended. This has nothing to do with your free speech rights. If anything, and I expect it has more to do with my rights as the website owner. I'm not required to provide you a place for what you want to say, no matter what you say or how you say it. However, you can set up your own website where you might choose to take issue with me. I can do nothing about that. That's what free speech really is, at least to me. The ability to set up your own pulpit and say whatever the heck you want from that pulpit. Free speech does not mean you have the right to use someone else's venue for your message. And it doesn't make a difference that you can't reach my audience to make your point from your site. Freedom of speech does not guarantee an audience. If you get one, fantastic. I have no right to reach them via your venue either. Now, people often cite the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, often in the context of having their First Amendment rights violated. Typically, they are incorrect. The amendment starts with the phrase, Congress shall make no law. If no law was made, or you weren't arrested, or a court decision wasn't involved, or a government agency didn't intervene, then the First Amendment doesn't apply. I have a link to the wonderful webcomic XKCD that honestly explains it more beautifully than I could. There's more to this, though, than the whim of the site owner. Many will have thought through what their site is about and what they want it to look like. They may well have set up some rules or guidelines ahead of time. Most websites publish terms of service about posting information, be it writing your own blog on a blog hosting service, making posts in a forum, or leaving comments on an article. By participating, you either explicitly or implicitly agree to abide by those terms. Don't like the terms? Don't post there. Go somewhere else. Violate the terms? Expect to see your comments, your post, or your blog disappear. It's not your site. If you want to play there, you must play by their rules. Similarly, if you use a hosting service or something similar to set up your own website, service, or blog, you'll likely be faced with what's called an acceptable use policy, or AUP. As the name implies, when you use someone else's services, even if you're paying for the privilege, you're required to abide by what they consider to be acceptable use of their services. And regardless of where you post or host or what their rules are, there are remaining things that are just simply wrong to say or do, at least morally and perhaps even legally. The classic example is that it's not within free speech rights to randomly yell "fire" in a crowded theater. Where free speech guarantees are available at all, they generally don't trump the safety of others. So, if website owners could just randomly delete my comments or post, how am I supposed to make my point to the people who are there and need to see it? You may not be able to. Whether you're on the web or using another form of media, there is nothing about human discourse that guarantees you get to make your point to the people you think need to hear it. There's certainly no legal recourse that I'm aware of. Except, and again, this is another case where you really need to talk to a lawyer, defamation, slander, and libel are all terms that have very specific legal implications. I won't even try to delve into any of that. But depending on your specific situation, information on the internet that intentionally lies about or maliciously harms you may be one thing on which you can act. Like I said, get an attorney. It happens to me. I have been banned from at least one discussion forum that I know of. Turns out it was corgi related. And as unfair as it is, the site owner had every right to do so. It really sucks because it prevents me from communicating with the other users of that site. But it's got to be this way. Consider the alternative. What if I was able to force that site owner to let me back in? If there were a mechanism to let people force their way onto sites that others own and control, that would have a dramatically chilling effect on the internet. In fact, it's likely that sites like Askleo would not exist. Malicious entities would use that ability to their own ends. As distasteful as it is, the website owner's ability to pick who they allow on their site is an important form of freedom of speech, even if they're wrong. Bottom line here is that before you complain about your free speech rights being violated, make sure they really were. If a site claims to promote free speech and then censored it, that's one thing. It's probably not illegal, it's just bad form. But if it's just your having violated their terms of service, then it was probably completely within their rights to do so, even if you find it morally reprehensible. For updates, for comments, for links related to this topic and more, visit askleo.com/10916. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.